Hello YouTubers, today's video is on ribs you can smoke even while camping. Now even though I'm using my smoker since I'm doing several racks of ribs, all you really need is wood chips and a container, even a foil pack to smoke those ribs on a small portable grill using indirect heat. Now I'm going to be doing a full slab of ribs, which is basically the same as what the St. Louis cut is, only they're not going to be trimmed off. I'll probably trim them off a little bit because I'm doing it for the family, so I'm not going to trim off and square them up like you would in competition. But the first thing I'm going to do after I trim them, or after I've trimmed them, is I'm going to apply a light coating of the all-purpose seasoning, which is salt, pepper, and garlic, otherwise known as APG. After I've done that, I'm going to apply the Killer Hog's barbecue rub. This is the stuff that I use all the time, and basically when I put it on, I put a good generous portion on it so it covers it completely, both the top and the bottom. I go through so much of it, in fact I buy it in the large 5-pound bag. In the meantime, while I'm seasoning them, today I'm going to be using the Mesquite wood chips. I actually switched to the cherry wood chips right now, and they're just basically mesquite. And I will put those in a firebox or in my wood chip box, and when I'm ready I'll put those in the smoker, and as those are heating up and getting ready to smoke or starting to smoke real good and my temperature is right, then I'll put them in for 3 hours. During that 3 hours I'll be using this mixture, and this is apple juice, which is just simply this, and then I'm going to be using apple cider vinegar, and I'll be squirting them or spraying those ribs about once every 45 minutes to an hour. Possibly after the first hour and a half or 2 hours I'll rotate those ribs. Once those ribs come off, I'll be putting them in a pan, and I'll put them on a bed of brown sugar, honey, and squeezed parquet. And then I'll put a meat side down, and I'll put the ribs on top of that, and I'll repeat, put a little bit more brown sugar on it, more honey, and more parquet. Those will be on for 2 hours. After the 2 hours, I will pull those off, and just a moment. Murphy, get away from there. Okay, sorry about that. Grand dog seems to be sniffing around, getting around the wood chip ash. So anyway, after I'm done cooking those for 2 hours, then I'm going to be putting them on the grill, and today I'm going to be using Cherry Republic teriyaki sauce, otherwise known as teriyaki. And this is something new I'm going to be trying out, and I'll see how that works out. Hopefully before I put this video up, I already had the verdict as far as how well they did. Today what I'm going to be doing is, after the ribs are trimmed and cooked, after the 2 hours, I'm going to pull them, let them rest, and then put them in the refrigerator. Later on, what I'm going to do is grill them, or put them on the grill with the sauce after I get over to my sister and brother-in-law's. That's where the test is going to be going with the rest of my family. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off a lot of the fat here, as well as this little flap here. Now this is pretty good meat yet, and what I'll use this for is I'll probably end up sticking these like in a small pan, so I'm going to pull this off and save that for later. I'm going to pull off any fat. That's going to go in my little trash thing. That's a dirty one that I pulled off the other grill, since it's going to be thrown away anyway. I didn't want to waste a clean one on it. Getting ready to pull the membrane off. So a lot of this is already pretty well trimmed off. A little bit of fat here. You don't want to cut too short or too tight. Too much off it. And what I'll do here is I'm going to trim these down a little bit here too. This is going to be good meat. I'm just going to trim this down, and this isn't for show, so I'm not going to do a St. Louis cut. And I'm going to trim them down, make them look a little bit better, and they're going to fit a lot better too. I'll be doing this on all 3 of my racks. Put this piece off here because this is going to get done faster than the other ones, and they'll just turn, they'll get overdone and fatty or burnt, overcooked. So by trimming that off now, that kind of takes care of making it cook a little bit easier. Now here we've got our, this is our membrane. It works out better if I have a paper towel. So I think what I'll do is I'll pull this little piece off here, throw that away, and then I'll get a little paper towel so I can get the rest of it. Now to pull this membrane off, what we'll do is we'll just take a regular little butter knife, and I'll just get underneath this membrane, and that gives you a chance to pull it up, and it'll give you something to bite onto. I've seen it done with a sharp knife, but to be quite honest with you, it doesn't quite work as well, and I end up stabbing myself. So I've just got this enough so I can grab onto it. Now I'll take my paper towel, see the membrane right there, and grab onto it, and we'll just pull it. And yes, it's not going to come off totally good, but that's what happens sometimes. You can't be perfect every time. This one's giving me a little bit more of a fight. There we go. I think I'll probably get a better bite on this now. You want to get the membrane off. Some people, they say, well, they like a little bit more of a crunchy or better bite with the membrane on. But this is just like a crispy hot dog. But to be quite honest, you really don't get much of a flavor out of it. And it does make it harder to bite through. Yes, it will hold the meat together better, but when it comes to actually eating and enjoying the ribs, it makes it much better. And as you can see, this is not coming off all that great. Let's see how the next one works out after I get this one done. There, that one's all off. Got a little bit of the backbone, or the sternum, that's what that is there. And in case you don't know, basically your baby backs is basically exactly that. It's the back part of the rib that's upright, goes along the back. These actually connect to the baby back. You just run a knife down or a saw down through it, and then this wraps around to the belly. And that's where you get your regular ribs, or your standard rack of ribs. And to be quite honest with you, the flavor I'd say is about the same. Some say, well, there's more meat on the baby back and there's more flavor to it. I don't know. To each their own. I got another 3 or 4 racks going right now for baby backs that I'm doing for the family here. And then this is going to be on my side of the family for tomorrow. All I'm doing here is just trimming off a little bit more of the fat, because all this fat, it's not going to render down. The little lines in here are the membranes.
Actually, it's marbling, not membrane.
And before you go any farther, yes, this is a channel for RVs, but you know, I've done it before. I've shown how to cook ribs with a small portable grill, and the same process you can do that I'm doing now with my regular grills, you can do with a portable grill. This has turned out to be a pretty nice looking rack of ribs. You don't want to cut these too low or make any valleys. You just want to get the general meat off of here. I'm going to leave this little bone on here because it'll give you a little bit more connective tissue or whatever. Okay, so I'll move this one over here. And we're going to do our second rack. Again, trim this off. Because all this is going to do is just burn. And I want to get the seasoning all the way into the ribs. Trim off a lot of this extra fat here. And I'm not cutting deep like I said, I'm just trimming it off a little bit. It looks easy, and actually it is. The more you do this, the easier it gets. You don't want to deal with this extra pieces. That's alright. Just throw the pieces away. See, I'm just trying to make it look good. Actually, this is in pretty good shape here. I'm not going to take anything off of there. I'm going to take this off here. That's going to make some pretty good little snacking pieces. I usually call them samples. That looks pretty good. Now typically when you do St. Louis cut, whether you buy them already cut or if you have the butcher do it, or if you do it yourself, this will be squared off. These ends will be cut, squared off, and this would follow the bone. But again, I'm not doing that. This is nice and thick, so it'll cook up well. Again, flip it over, and we're going to get our silver skin here. Let's see how I do on this one. I'll go a little deeper. And what I'm doing is I'm prepping this well in advance. I know I'm not going to cook this before tomorrow morning. I'm not going to season them tonight or today, because if I do, that seasoning will dry out the ribs, and I don't want that much. I don't want to ruin the flavor. I want to give it good flavor, but you know, if you put it on and just let it sit there, it's not like beef. You put seasoning on too far in advance, and it will dry out that meat and make them less appetizing or tasty. So make them too salty also. And I like it nice, and I like my ribs to be nice and moist. And I think a lot of other people do as well, because last year I entered my first competition and won at first place by doing these exact same ribs with this exact same process, with the exception of I'm using a different flavor sauce. I've got my smoker started. That's heating up right now. After I've wetted down my cherry wood strips, I am letting those heat up, and by the time I get done seasoning the ribs, they'll be ready to go in. They'll go in for about 3 hours. After that, I'll pull them, wrap them, and put them back in for another 2 hours. So what I've done is I've got a full slab of ribs, and I'm going to lightly season them. And I'll be using my Killer Hogs all-purpose seasoning, which is salt, pepper, and garlic. This is one of my favorites. I love this stuff. So I just I don't coat the whole thing. I just kind of do just a light coating on it. Yesterday I did baby back ribs, and I used a little less than this. I've already trimmed these off. I pulled the silver skin, and I've also cut down the ribs a little bit more. I didn't trim them down St. Louis style, but I did cut the ends off a bit so that I can fit them into my smoker better, which I've named Easy Bake Oven. The reason I did that is because when I did a competition last year, one of the guys called it an Easy Bake Oven when I asked him where he wanted me to put it, and he told me I can put my little Easy Bake Oven anywhere I want. So I found a spot. I used my recipe, and when we got done, I took first place. So my response to him after that is, this little Easy Bake Oven just kicked your butt. Had a real nice, they all had pretty nice smokers, and I was up against everything. So you don't have to put a lot of money to make good ribs. I would like to have something bigger, and I want to expand a little bit. Maybe try using a wood smoker sometime. But until then, I've got my little Easy Bake, which is nothing more than a propane smoker that I picked up at Lowe's. Okay, so I fully covered that. You don't rub that, you just pat it down. I'll put the first one there. Probably doing this a little out of sequence, but I'm not a professional. And you can try this at home. little bit here. The bone side. Most of the flavor is going to go down through the top. At least that's my theory. So I like to do the bone side first, and then meat side last. Today's recipe is going to be using cherry wood chips, which is one of my favorites. Yesterday I used a bourbon wood chip, and today I'm going to be using, it's called Cherry Republic from up in Traverse City, Michigan. You can get it online, but since I live in Michigan, I get it in Michigan. But it's Cherry Republic, they call it Cherryaki. I'll show you that in a minute. I'll give you a little look at all the ingredients. I'll give you a little, give the sides a little flavor here too. This particular rub, it's got a little kick to it, a little sweetness. For those of you who've got sophisticated taste, for me, I just think it tastes good. Kind of sounds like the Barbecue Pit Boys. I watch them all the time too. I get a lot of information and secrets and tips off of YouTube. Barbecue Pit Boys is one of my favorites. Also Cowboy Rollins, Ken Rollins, he's pretty good. T. Roy Cooks, I've watched him a few times. My favorite though is Malcolm Reed from How to Do Barbecue Right. That's where I've gotten all my seasonings, which is a good point to show you. This is the AP again. Then I've got the Killer Hogs Barbecue Rub. This is not the hot. And then the other things I get is I get their Dexter Knives. I love these knives. They're sharp and they do a good job. They hold their edge pretty good. And I do have a pairing I have to season or tighten up a little bit, or sharpen up a little bit. This particular batch of ribs I'm taking down. We did Marilyn's side of the family yesterday. Her son and grandkids were up from Tennessee, where he's stationed down in Kentucky. Yep, he's at Fort Campbell, so it's Fort Campbell's right on the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. Actually, Fort Campbell's in Kentucky and the main gate's in Tennessee. So anyway, they were up here for a week. And I tried out the ribs on them, which he seemed to really enjoy. And then we took them out on our lake where they have the ring of fire and fireworks. So we had a pretty good time. Now, I told you I cut down the ribs. I'm going to use these pieces. I'm just going to dab them in my leftover here. And I'm going to put these on the rack next to the other ribs. so they're not going to go to waste. Some of the meat that I cut off earlier when I was preparing the ribs and I was trimming them, what I did with that is I put those in a separate little wrap, and I'll probably throw those on when I do the wraps, when I wrap these ribs. I'm just going to use the rest of this rub here. I buy this rub by the 5-pound bag. That's how much I use it. And then just refill the shakers. Okay, so that's about done. Okay, so in review, start out with all-purpose seasoning from Killer Hogs. Then I go to the Killer Hog Barbecue Rub. Excuse the look of the thing, my hands are wet and they got some rub on them. After they're on, which I'll be doing over cherry wood chips, and I'm going to be heating those up, or I'll keep that temperature right around between 230 and 250. This is a mixture of apple juice and apple cider vinegar. About 2/3 apple juice, 1/3 apple cider vinegar. And I'll be spraying these ribs about every hour or so. And then after they're all wrapped and cooked, and I take them out, I'm going to be doing the Cherry Republic teriyaki sauce. In between, when I do wrap them, I always put them in a foil pan on top of a bed of brown sugar, honey, and butter, meat side down. And then I do another coat of the same thing on top of the bones, and then I cover them up and I put them back in the smoker again for 2 hours. So I'll go ahead and cut this off, go ahead and put my ribs in, and I'll get back to you when I get ready to wrap them. Now the times that you have it on the smoker may vary based on whatever you're using. On my smoker I have it for 3 hours, but when I use my portable grill I can cut that almost in half. Because of the variance in temperature, you really have to watch your cooking time when using a portable grill. Hello again, YouTubers. As you can see, the ribs, I've taken them out of the smokers. They're just about right. You can see there's a little bit of shrinking around the bone. Starting to color, sweat a little bit. The small pieces have gotten a little bit dark, but I'm going to go ahead and run with them. If they don't work out, no big loss. But I'm going to be wrapping these anyway, and so they're going to pull some moisture out of that, the honey butter and brown sugar combination. I've got 3 of the small pans set because this is the size that fits in my smoker, and it works out pretty nice for me. One other thing before we go too much farther is I use these black gloves, and this is something I picked up and first off of How to Barbecue Right with Malcolm Reed. These work out great. I buy the gloves at there's like 100 pair at a time, a piece, and usually runs about $10 plus or minus. And then I have the inserts where you get, just for a couple dollars or so, you get several pairs of these liners, and these work out great because I can handle hot food and it still keeps my hands from burning. I've even used these when I've done Thanksgiving dinners at our local VFW. I can actually debone the hot turkeys and without burning my hands, and also I could lift up a whole ham right out of a roaster without burning my hands as well. So nice little investment to have. It's very handy to have. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some brown sugar, and this is going to be going right in here. So I'll take the brown sugar and I'm just going to sprinkle some on the bottom. And I'm not going to do a lot. I used to do quite a bit more, but I just kind of get enough here to kind of give a little foundation. And it's still, this amount makes a real nice bark. The next thing I'll do is I'll take some honey, drape it over the top. Can't have too much sweetness, can you? And then my Parquet squeeze bottle. And I'll spray that. I'll take my ribs, put that over the top, meat side down, do a little bit more right across the bone sides. Again, I'm not going to overdo it. I found it in time. Just a little bit's enough. Again, a little bit more honey and some Parquet. After that, I'll take my Reynolds foil. Again, all my wraps I do, or whenever I'm wrapping ribs or any kind of meat, I like the Reynolds heavy duty. It really works out well. Never been disappointed with it. And I just simply rinse it all the way around. And I'm just going to set this next to the smoker until I get the other ones done. I'll slide this over, maybe it might be easier for you to see. Again, repeat the process. A little brown sugar. A little honey. And a little butter. And my ribs. Now, take a little bit more brown sugar. You can see how that's really starting to cook real well. Starting to get a little shrinking on my bones. I'm hoping that my microphone battery is holding up, otherwise I'm going to be doing voiceover on this. If so, so be it. And do it again. Now I've got a few of those pieces. I got some room in this tray. Dab just a little bit down here. A little bit more honey. More butter. Now we don't really have to do this. I'll stick this in here. And I got the other one that I'll do the same thing with. Just kind of cram it in here. Yeah, switch that. Yeah, that fits better. These look like they might be a little bit on the toasty side, but that's okay. No harm, no foul. If they're too done, I'm not going to worry about them. They're just like the scraps. A tad butter, or oil, or honey. Starting to get the gist of it now. butter's already starting to melt. Oop. Readjust there. I like this method a lot better than just wrapping them. I know wrapping would be a little bit more cost effective with this foil, not using the pan, and take up less room, but I think it gets just as good of an effect. It's still steam, you still get the steam from the cooking of the meat, and all that brown sugar and butter and honey is going to melt down, and it'll form a nice little syrup on the bottom and make it a lot easier to handle. Now for the final one, do the same thing. If you don't want to see this, you can go ahead and jump forward. But I kind of like doing it for those new subscribers and viewers who have not seen this before. And again, I apologize for doing a cooking video on a channel where we specialize in RVs. But you know, I've learned a lot about cooking just on the RV channels. And it's this, like I said before, you can do this while you're camping, just on a smaller scale. I've made some real good ribs just using my small portable gas grill. I think we're going to be like kind of double decking this thing. I put a little bit of the brown sugar on here, on the top again. These might just be a little bit extra sweet because of the next thing I'm going to do with this. This is the one thing I don't usually do too much by temperature. Although the smoker after 3 hours was right around 247, and that's in that margin of error section. Anywhere between 230 and 250, some even do it higher. I like right in between 230 and 250. I feel pretty comfortable with that. A little butter. Now I'm just going to put this last piece right on top of it. We'll just add a little bit more brown sugar, a little honey, and butter. Yeah, love butter. Okay, set this aside. I'm going to be using this to transport my ribs because I'm taking them to my family's place. This is all set. I'll go ahead and cover them up. Now if you forget when you're smoking these to spray them or baste them, it's not going to ruin them, it's not earth shattering, it happens. I guarantee you, no matter what you do, you're still going to have good ribs. And there, FYI, I like the shiny side out. Now I'll go ahead and start putting in my ribs in the smoker. Since I opened it up, it's dropped down to 170 degrees. But that's alright, it'll build right back up. Closer. Kick it up just a touch. It'll build up more heat there. I've also found, for those of you wondering about your vents, I've got this turned down, probably maybe just a touch past low, probably a quarter of the temperature setting from the lowest temperature setting, and I've got my vents open. Again, I've got a probe in there because I don't trust this particular thermostat. That always seems to be wrong. Right now it's pretty close. They're both reading close to 100, and that's around 140, and this is reading 140. But I like the accuracy of my probe. And it's also remote control, so I can monitor the temperature while I'm inside the house. And I'll get back to you when I'm ready to pull them out. Now, after having them wrapped in the smoker for 2 hours, I removed them, and then we went over to my younger sister's. At that point, I put them on my brother-in-law's grill and let them heat up a little bit before I started applying the barbecue sauce. After heating up the sauced ribs for a few minutes, I pulled them off and cut them into individual ribs. I also trimmed off the ends. I then hit them with a little extra sauce, and then we served them. They came out to be really good. It's one of the first things to run out of all the main dishes at my sister's. I apologize for the length of this video, but I hope you enjoyed this little demonstration on fixing ribs, whether in a smoker or in a camper small grill. And if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And most of all, thanks for watching.